Oop. Able. So so as long as I have hopefully can Twitch and Yeah. Oh, finally. Okay. The So doing my with the names of God. To our Elohim, to God, at a plurality, which is is indicative I guess I was disconnected. Man. Okay, well, at least my video or my audio is back. So now let's see if I can get my camera back. There we go. whatever is trying to shut me down, I plead the blood of Jesus, and I ask that you um, open our hearts and open our minds for it does not become people put him in the right spot and not as a God. He is not God. He is not Jesus. He is important. He's more of a John the Baptist, right? He 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 should be recognized as a man of like is not to be worshipped, just like President Trump. Father, I pray in the name of your Son Jesus Christ that we just chop off. I pray Matthew 3:10 that we chop off the root, chop off the root, chop off the root of the wicked, and Father, that you just uh, uh wait a minute. I call on the name of your Son Jesus. I by the power of Jesus, by the name of your Son, I just ask that just and I ask for again. I ask for forgiveness, Father. I pray for our nation, Father. I pray for our nation. I pray for people are prepared for what is coming. That all right, there we go. Then I'll share the screen in Zoom. I was Uh-oh. So he told the he he finally allowed the Assyrians to be or to the northern kingdom of Israel, but Judah and Benjamin, and so we have the northern kingdom has now fallen to the Assyrian rule. So now we're going to start with a king in Judah called Hezekiah. Um, or Hezekiah actually turns out to be a pretty good king. It's a miracle. But Ahaz was he was probably, well, with the marriage of Athaliah. What they did was very So whenever there's a glitch, I'm not going to keep. I'm just going to keep going. Okay. So I'm just going to keep going. This area. So God gave her uh, Hezekiah of and Josiah. He raised because I had because from David that I through Judah. So 3 years after that, the northern kingdom was conquered. The king was a valuable lesson to Hezekiah. He first heard he saw first when the people of God rejected their God and worshipped other gods. AS and T house. Remember, Ahaz was uh, can in 716 to 15 BC. Compare this verse with 13, where his 14th year as sole ruler not God. I mean, the only person, first of all, the only person who could do it had for the been 10, 10 the first, who was serving Solomon, his son. Then what Jeroboam did is he didn't want the boy to make the sacrifices to God in Jerusalem, so he built in Bethel, and he built pipe Bethel in the here and built so he can worship God here. He can worship the Lord. But is you will not worship another god, you will not make graven images. They basically worship another god. So Hezekiah, in his zeal, broke in pieces the bronze serpent, or this bronze artifact, and put an end to the idolatrous worship of this uh, object. So, this bronze serpent was a wonderful thing. When the afflicted people of Israel looked upon it, they were saved. It was even a representation of Jesus Christ, as Jesus himself said in um, John 3, verses 14 through 15, and said, "And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life." At the same time, man could take something so good and used by God and make a destructive idol out of it. In the same way, sometimes good things have become idols and therefore must be destroyed. For example, if the true cross of Jesus or his actual burial cloth were to be discovered and these objects became idolatrous distractions, it would be better for these objects to be destroyed. Charles Spurgeon says, although it was an interesting memorial, it must be utterly destroyed because it presented a temptation to idolatry. Here, if ever in this world, was a relic of high antiquity, of undoubted authenticity, a relic which had seen its hundreds of years, about which there was no question as to its being indisputably the very serpent that Moses made, and it was moreover a relic which had formerly possessed miraculous power, for in the wilderness the looking at it had saved the dying, yet it must be broken in pieces because Israel burned incense to it. So they made this object a thing of worship. And again, first two commandments. There is only one God. He's a jealous God. You will not have anything else before him. You will not commit idolatry. You will not you're not to make images, you know, idols. That's it. That's where you get the word idolatry. Idols. I mean, think about the crucifix. People wear the crucifix. I used to wear that all the time, and and I know people do it, and they say, "Well, it's just it's a sign of my, it's just an outward representation of my faith." But actually, I wore the cross, but I have had some crucifix, And then I got to realizing when I really started looking into like the second commandment about making graven images, I think about, what about angels? First of all, angels are never feminine in the Bible, and you see all these images. So right there, that right there is a false image. And I thought, I got to thinking the more, and people will say, well, you're not worshiping it, but it's still a false image. And so this is my opinion. Okay, if you're listening, you've got to make your own decision. You got to decide. But for me, I felt kind of convicted about that. I mean, so I stopped wearing the cross. I stopped wearing the I got rid I got rid of a cross, and I gave it to a little girl. I was on a mission trip to Mexico, and I didn't think of it at the time. I just thought, you know what, I don't need this anymore. I'll give it I'll bless somebody with it. And I was thinking I was blessing somebody with it, but now I'm not so sure if I did the right thing, uh, because like I said, it can become an idol. Point three, God's people must likewise be on guard against idolatry today. There are many dangers of idolatry in the modern church, making leaders idols. Uh, I mean, one of the things about President Trump, he came in as a wrecking ball. He came in trying to speak truth. One of the things he did back in his first administration, he talked to the religious leaders and said, hey, you are underrepresented, and that's how he really started waking some people's eyes up. Now, and of course, people say, well, you're making him a god. And I look at him more of a Moses character. You know, Moses was a type of Messiah. Queen Esther was this type of Messiah. Daniel was a type of Messiah. If you look at Daniel or Jeremiah, even they were prophets. Um, let's see, who else could you look to? Anybody who tries to save the nation of Israel or save a people, you can look at them as a Messiah type. That's like there's lots of different types of the Antichrist spirit. There's a lot of people who have that Antichrist spirit. That doesn't mean that they're the Antichrist that going to, that is being prepared for the end of the uh, end of the age. The Bible describes it at the end of the age. There's different types of Antichrist spirit. So, and that's the reason why I said, like with Charlie Kirk, it's got to be careful. I mean, from what I'm seeing, it's a good thing. People are worshiping God. They're worshiping Jesus. They're honoring him, but they're not worshiping him, and that's important. It's important that we do not lift somebody, even a martyr, because he has now been, he has, Charlie Kirk has now been put in that martyr status. Even martyrs, we do not worship. I mean, there have been others over the years, over the centuries, who were martyrs. Who, King Stephen, the first martyr in the Bible, and Acts. Stephen was a martyr. So we just got to be careful. So making education an idol, making human eloquence an idol, making customs and habits of ministry an idol, making forms of worship an idol. Uh, you know, you know, uh, Government. I mean, we expect. I mean, people nowadays expect us to pay for education, pay for medical, pay for a lot of things. It's one thing to help somebody, but we should not be looking to the government to be our provider. God is our provider. That's the reason why he's Jehovah Jireh. He is the one who provides. And usually I go through Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Rapha, and I didn't. No. So the name Nehushtan means piece of brass, and is a way to make less of this object that was made an idol. Commentator Wiseman says, so Hezekiah had it turned from an object of false worship to scrap metal. Commentator Trapp says, such was the venom of the Israelitish idolatry that the brazen serpent stung worse than the fiery. Hezekiah was unique in his passion and energy for his personal trust in God, for promoting the true worship of God. This was even more remarkable when we consider that his father Ahaz was one of the worst kings that Judah had, and we saw that in 2 Kings 16, verses 10 through 20. And I'll read a portion of it. I don't know if I can read all of it, but we go now. I lost it. Now King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet with Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw an altar that was at Damascus. Oh yeah, this is where King Ahaz went to the temple and tried to, I think, burn incense, and the high priest says, "No, you can't do that." But he's like, "I'm going to do what he wants to." And again, God set that up. The only person that could do that was the high priest. So he saw an altar that was at Damascus, and King Ahaz sent to Urijah, the priest, the design of the altar and its pattern according to all its workmanship. When Urijah the priest built an altar according to all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. So Urijah the priest made it before King Ahaz came back from Damascus, and when the king came back from Damascus, the king saw the altar, and the king approached the altar and made offerings on it. See, that is a no-no. He was not supposed to do that. The only person that could do it was, and he, like I said, he also passed. The Bible describes it as passing his sons through the fire. So he burned his burnt offering and his grain offering and poured its drink offering and sprinkled the blood of his peace offering on the altar. He also brought the bronze altar, which was before Jehovah, from the front of the temple, from between the new altar and the house of Jehovah, and put it on the north side of the new altar. Then King Ahaz commanded Uriah the priest, saying, on the great new altar, burn the morning burnt offering, the evening grain offering, the king's burnt sacrifice, and his grain offering, with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, and their grain offering, and their drink offerings, and sprinkle on it all the blood of the burnt offering, and all the blood of the sacrifice. And the bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by. And of course, okay, so there was another king before him that I can't remember now because it was like in 15 or 14, but I think it was his father or his grandfather that kind of demanded to not, he didn't make the sacrifices, but he basically told, he didn't make all the other sacrifices like the grain and burnt offering. He went in to make a different kind of sacrifice, but the high priest there actually stopped him and said, "No, you shouldn't be in here." And because he was being rebellious and everything, God struck him with leprosy. And I wish I could remember the name. There's all these names get, because you got the overlapping kingdoms. It's kind of been, it kind of gets hard to kind of keep track of who's doing what. Commentator G. Campbell Morgan says it is remarkable that such a man as Hezekiah could be the son of Ahaz. Yet we must remember that all his life he was under the influence of Isaiah. Remember, Isaiah is a prophet. Because of Hezekiah's faithful trust in Jehovah, God blessed him thoroughly. It fulfilled a long-standing promise to David and his descendants. If they obey God, their reign would always be secure. And again, we go to 1 Kings 2 on that, verses 1 through 4. Now the days of David drew near that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, I go away of all the earth. Be strong, therefore, and prove yourself a man, and keep the charge of Jehovah your Elohim, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, his commandments, and his judgments, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that ye may prosper in all that you do and wherever you turn, that Jehovah may fulfill his word which he spoke concerning me, saying, If your sons walk before me in truth with all their heart and with all their soul, he said, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. And because God kept his promise to King David, there's always a man of, that was the one thing, there was always a descendant of King David on the throne in the southern kingdom. When God tore the Israelite nation into two kingdoms, the northern and the southern, he did that because of King Solomon's idolatry. And King Solomon was pretty prosperous for the most part, but because he let the influence of the pagan, of the women that he married, making political alliances and what have you, because of that, he lost most of the kingdom. And God even made the same promise to Jeroboam when it was time for King Solomon to pass away. Uh, Jeroboam, God says, hey, if you walk in my ways and do what I say, then you will always, your kingdom will be as, how did he put it? It would, can't remember the exact wording, but basically he said it would be the same on equal as King David. But of course, Jeroboam never fully followed God, never, and he taught his descendants to do the same thing. There was never a good king in the northern kingdom. At this time, Assyria was mighty enough to completely conquer the northern kingdom of Israel. Yet the kingdom of Judah stood strong because God blessed the trusting and obedient king. Matthew Poole says he took off that yoke of subjugation and tribute to which his father had wickedly submitted, and reassumed that full independent sovereignty which God had settled in the house of David. Later, Zedekiah was rebuked for his rebellion against the king of Babylon, but and this is a different king. But that was a different case, and it shows that sometimes rebellion is justified and sometimes it is not. By that time, with Zedekiah, God had it with Judah too, and he, you know, basically he Zedekiah did it without the approval of God or without inquiring of God. Hezekiah also found success in subjugating Judah's aggressive neighbors. He worked for a strong, free, and independent Judah. Verse 9. Now it came to pass in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, the king of the son of Elah, king of Israel, that Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. And at the end of 3 years, they took it. In the 6th year of Hezekiah, that is the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was taken. Remember, Samaria is the capital of Israel. Verse 11. Then the king of Assyria carried Israel away captive to Assyria and put them in Halah and by the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes, because they did not obey the voice of Jehovah their Elohim, but transgressed his covenant and all that Moses, the servant of Jehovah, had commanded, and they would neither hear nor do them. Remember, after the king of Assyria took the people out of Samaria, he actually tried to replace them with other captives that they had and other people. And because God still had a presence, his presence was still part of Samaria, because that's still considered God's land. He sent lions. So what I can't remember, Shalmaneser did was he had prophets to go back to live in there to keep the lions at bay. See, I gotta figure out where I last. So this was and should have been a sobering experience for the southern kingdom of Judah to see. The cruel devastation brought by the Assyrians showed that calamities would come upon the disobedient people of God. Commentator Dilday says from this time on, the southern kingdom would be known not only by the name Judah, but also by this ancient name Israel. So, now the northern kingdom has fallen of Israel. So see, I mean, this is another reason why I'm doing this. I mean, I really wouldn't know this as many times as I've read because it does get confusing, not only because you have overlapping kingdoms, unless you understand why the kingdom was split in two in the first place, or the Israelite nation was split in two the first place, and then how the Assyrians came and why they took the northern kingdom and why Judah was captured by the Babylonians. You you don't understand. I mean, there are people out there that don't understand how they just take one, well, God's promises through Abraham, but you got to remember the promises through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God made the same promise not to just Abraham, but he made the promise to Isaac. He made the promise to Jacob. He told Jacob and Isaac that they would father multiple, many nations. So people were not going so far as understanding each generation had the same promise of God, just like David did, just like King Solomon did. They had the same promise, but because they didn't walk in all their ways, or the kingdom didn't corporately, because they didn't do it all the time, then this is what happens. Of course, you still have the people, the remnant, uh, that that did, but corporately they didn't. Let's see. So the people of the northern kingdom were not any less Israelites and the descendants of Abraham by blood than were the people of the southern kingdom. Therefore, this clearly showed Judah that when they also stopped hearing and doing the commandments of God, they would also face judgment. Verse 13. And in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. Then Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, I have done wrong. Turn away from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will pay. And the king of Assyria assessed Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of Jehovah and in the treasuries of the king's house. At that time, Hezekiah stripped the gold from the doors of the temple of Jehovah and from the pillars which Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria. So you have, instead of going to God and asking, he's basically stealing from God to, as good as he wasn't perfect. So this was approximately 5 years after the fall of Samaria. Now the king of Assyria brought his force against Judah, who had successfully resisted him before, back in verse 7, as we saw. He captured all the fortified cities of Judah. And needed only to take Jerusalem itself to completely conquer Judah. Let's see, where's. So the mention of Lachish is important to historians and archaeologists. The British Museum displays the Syrian carvings depicting the siege of the city of Lachish, which was an important fortress city of Judah. Lachish was 30 miles southwest of Jerusalem. Commentator Dilday says an interesting wall relief taken from the excavation of Sennacherib's royal palace in Nineveh is preserved in the British Museum. So people who think that the Bible is a bunch of hooey, we have archaeological preservations proving it's true. You also have secular historians also. It portrays the Assyrian king on a portable throne in his military camp outside Lachish. Prisoners of war are marching by on foot, and all the booty from the city is being displayed on ox wagons. Archaeologists also discovered a pit at Lachish with the remains of about 1,500 casualties that probably came from the later attack of Nebuchadnezzar, more than 100 years after this attack of the Assyrians. So this was clear, although understandable, lack of faith on the part of Hezekiah. He felt it was wiser to pay off the Syrian king and become his subject than it was to trust God to defend Judah against this mighty king. Point one, we can suppose that Hezekiah thought that since the northern kingdom had been recently conquered, that all the fortified cities of Judah had been captured, God had demonstrated that he would not intervene on behalf of Judah. Therefore, Hezekiah felt he had to do something himself. Well, how many of us do that all the time? You know, we get into this. We're doing fine. We do God. You know, we're praising God, worshiping God, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you don't feel like God brought you through it. So you get to the point. It seems like there's a pattern. We either find God in the chaos, or we forget to thank Him when things do happen, even without the chaos. So we forget to acknowledge Him uh, when things are going good. So I mean, I'm guilty. I do that too. It's like, God, when? It's like, God, when is all this garbage that we're seeing? When is it going to be? When can we start the healing process? When are we? I mean, I I do believe we're in the last days. I also believe that the group of the group of these people who are being influenced by the familiar spirits, the demonic spirits, they also the evil ones driving people to basically just do ungodly things. They know the Bible, they know prophecy, and they're trying to get us to be afraid, and they're trying to convince us that, you know, the Jesus is on his way. I mean, Jesus is. I mean, this is it's kind of like when you look at stuff, is it a supernatural event occurring by the, as God is allowing that to happen, or is it a manufactured event? Now, that doesn't mean that God is not in control. That does not mean, I'm not trying to say that God. Uh, I mean, I know it gets complicated, but I don't. That doesn't mean that God, you know, that God is not allowing this maybe to wake people up. You know, Jesus Himself says you're going to hear about wars and rumors of wars and all these signs that the coming is coming. But He says also, take heart. It is not time. This is the birth pains. I think we're in the birth pains of for when Jesus returns. So we have, it's just, I don't know. Does at this point, we live for God. It doesn't matter if He's returning like tonight, tomorrow, 100 years from now. We're supposed to occupy until He comes. We're supposed to be the light, the salt and light of the world. We're supposed to tell people about who God is, who Jesus is. So we keep doing that. Even Apostle Paul says, we keep going until the race is run. Until the end of our race. Whenever God decides that is. Perhaps this idea was strengthened in Hezekiah when he remembered the wickedness of his own father Ahaz, and when he considered that because their prior sin, Judah deserved such judgment. So Hezekiah hoped that this policy of appeasement would make Judah safe. he was wrong, and this his policy only impoverished Judah and the temple and made the king of Assyria more bold than ever against Judah. Verse 17. Then the king of Assyria sent the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh from Lachish with a great army against Jerusalem to King Hezekiah, and they went up and came to Jerusalem. When they had come up, they went and stood by the aqueduct from the upper pool, which was on the highway to the fuller's field. And when they had called to the king, Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder came out to them. Then Rabshakeh said to them, Say now to Hezekiah, Thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, What confidence is this in which you trust? You speak of having plans and powers for war, but they are mere words. And in whom do you trust that you will rebel against me? Now look, you are trusting in the staff of this house, of this broken reed, Egypt, on which if a man leans, it will go into his hand and piece it. So is Pharaoh king of Egypt to all who trust in him. But if you say to me, We trust in the Jehovah our Elohim, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah has taken away, and said to Judah and Jerusalem, You shall worship before this altar in Jerusalem? Now therefore, I urge you, give a pledge to my master, the king of Assyria, and I will give you 2,000 horses if you are able on your part to put riders on them. How then, verse 24, how then will you repel one captain of the least of my master's servants and put your trust in Egypt for chariots and horsemen? Have I now come up without Jehovah against this place to destroy it? Jehovah said to me, Go against this land and destroy it. So they're trying to psych them out. That's what the enemy likes to do, psych them out. Let's see, what was the last one? So Rabshakeh, this is actually not a name but a title. It describes the field commander for the Assyrian army who represented the Assyrian king Sennacherib. Rabshakeh, let's see. So I've never heard of this commentator, but Moityer, Motyeer, is cited in his commentary on Isaiah. So apparently, this commentator sets did a study or something on Isaiah, and this is his quote: Rabshakeh, an Assyrian title, possibly originally chief cupbearer, but by this time some high officer of state. Let's see, stood by Eliakim, John's recorder, came to them. So Rabshakeh seemed to be in complete command of the situation. He could walk right into the city of Jerusalem and stand at the crucial water supply, which was Jerusalem's lifeline in a siege attack. As he stood there, 3 officials from Hezekiah's government came to meet him. We might wish that Hezekiah trusted in Jehovah, and that is what the Rabshakeh mocked. Instead, Hezekiah put his hope in an alliance with Egypt, and the Rabshakeh wanted him to lose confidence in that alliance. Point one, it was a great temptation for Hezekiah during this time to make a defensive alliance with Egypt, which seemed to be the only nation among strong enough to protect Judah against the mighty Assyrians. As a prophet, Isaiah did everything he could to discourage Hezekiah and the leaders of Judah from putting their trust in Egypt. Isn't it interesting? The ties to Egypt. Egypt is where um, Jacob went to protect the Israelites, the 11 other tribes of Jacob, and that is also where. So that is where Moses brought them out of, and then when it came time when Jesus was born, and the angel told Joseph to leave Bethlehem, that's where they went. They went back into Egypt for a time being. So Isaiah 19 verses 11 through 17. Surely the princes of Zoan are fools. Pharaoh's wise counselors give foolish counsel. How do you say to Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, the son of um, how do you say to Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, the son of ancient kings? Where are they? Where are your wise men? Let them tell you now, and let them know what Jehovah of hosts, or Jehovah Sabaoth, has proposed against Egypt. The princes of Zoan have, the princes, as in multiple prince, Prices, of Zoan have become fools. The princes of Noph are deceived. They have also deluded Egypt, those who are the mainstay of its tribes. Jehovah has mingled a perverse spirit in their midst, and they have caused Egypt to err in her work, as a drunken man staggers in his vomit. Neither will there be any work for Egypt which the head or tail, palm branch, or bulrush may do. In that day, Egypt will be like women and will be afraid and fear because of the waving of the hand of Jehovah Sabaoth, or Lord of Hosts, which he waves over it. And the land of Judah will be a terror to Egypt. Everyone who makes mention of it will be afraid in himself, because the counsel of Jehovah Sabaoth, or Lord of Hosts, which he has determined against it. And then in Isaiah 20, verses 1 through 6, in the year that Tartan came to Ashdod, then Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him, and he fought against Ashdod and took it. At the same time, Jehovah spoke by Isaiah the son of Amoz, saying, Go and remove the sackcloth from your body and take your sandals off your feet. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. Then Jehovah said, Just as my servant Isaiah has walked naked and barefoot 3 years for a sign and a wonder against Egypt and Ethiopia, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians as prisoners and the Ethiopians as captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. Then they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation, and Egypt their glory. And the inhabitant of this territory will say in that day, Surely such is our expectation wherever we flee for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria. How shall we escape? And then verse 30, chapter 30, verse 1 through 7. Woe to the rebellious children, says Jehovah, who take counsel, but not of me, and who devise plans, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, who walk to go down to Egypt, and have not asked my advice, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore, the strength of Pharaoh shall be by your shame, or shall be your shame, and trust in the shadow of Egypt shall be your humiliation. For his princes were at Zoan, and his ambassadors came to Hanes. They were all ashamed of a people who could not benefit them, or be help or benefit, but a shame and also a reproach, the burden against the beast of the south, through a land of trouble and anguish, from which came the lioness and lion, the viper and fiery flying serpent. They will carry their riches on the backs of young donkeys and their treasures on the humps of camels to a people who shall not profit. For the Egyptians shall help in vain and to no purpose. Therefore I have called her Rahab Ham-shebeth. So Jehovah wanted Judah to trust him instead of Egypt. So, in this sense, Rabshakeh spoke the truth. God wanted Judah to have no confidence in Egypt at all, but the Rabshakeh did not do it to bring Judah to a firm trust in Jehovah Elohim, who can and will deliver him from the Assyrians. He did it to completely demoralize Judah and drive them to despair. Uh, Boogerface, or I call him Boogerface, or Satan, often attacks us the same way. Often, even when he tells the truth, you are such a rotten sinner, he never does it to lead us to a firm trust in Jehovah our Elohim, which is Jesus died for sinners. So if I'm a rotten sinner, Jesus died to forgive and free me. Instead, Satan's strategy, or Boogerface's strategy, even if he tells us the truth, is always to demoralize us and drive us to despair. And that's the reason why you need to be around people who are not just like-minded, but about the forgiveness of Jesus, about the forgiveness of God, and to remind you we're not so dirty that God, Jesus cleansed us. John 3:16, for God so loved the world. I tell you, one things that help me is when I start singing praise and worship music, when I start putting praise and worship music on the TV, or even if I just, right now there's all sorts of, just be careful of what group you use, um, who you follow, but there's all sorts of prayers out there to break the um, generational curses. There's all sorts of prayers on the internet that you can ask God. You know Psalm 91, Psalm 23, Psalm 37. There's all sorts of. That's the reason why it's also important that we keep in the Bible. And I mean, when you see some of the things, some of the rotten people that, look what King David did, and yet God calls him a man after his own heart. Uh, Abraham, you've got all sorts of, I mean, foolish people in the Bible, but yet God, look at Hebrews, look at the Hall of Faith. People who, I mean, if you were to look at their background and everything, Rahab, um, Ruth, you look at them, God, Jesus died for them too. So, I mean, look at Apostle Paul. Paul was out murdering saints, and yet in his zeal, but yet he wrote what, about 75-80% of the Bible, of the New Testament. So we're in good company. If we're rotten sinners, we are in good company, because uh, a lot of those saints are those rotten sinners are recognized as saints and are living up in heaven with God. And if you go to Revelation, it talks about the martyrs that are waiting to be let loose too. So, from the perspective of the unbeliever, Sennacherib asked a valid question. Uh, our life must let's see. F.B. Meyer says our life must be to a large extent be a mystery. Our peace pass understanding, and our motives be hidden. The sources of our supply, the ground of our confidence, the reasons for our action must evade the most searching scrutiny of those who stand outside the charmed circle of the face of God. We must be prepared to be criticized because our behavior is determined by facts, when the princes of this world know not. And you get all sorts of people. If you stand for what Jesus stands for, and you stand for the full truth, and not just the stuff we like God loves everybody. Yes, He loves everybody that He sends. He loved everybody enough to send His Son Jesus Christ to be the Savior of the world. But Jesus also said, um, he's sifting out the wheat and the tares, um, and the sheep and the goats. And He says, not everybody who comes to me says, Lord, Lord, um, He's going to recognize. A lot of it is motivation of heart, and a lot of it is, are you just taking one part? Is one of the most abused scriptures, especially nowadays, is, yes, we show kindness to strangers, yes, we show kindness to foreigners, but they they have a job to do too. And God is about law and order. So we can't just keep, God has boundaries too. God says no. There is a time and place to say no. That doesn't mean, the whole idea of the foreigner comes back when the Israelites escaped Pharaoh and left Egypt. And it was basically telling the Israelites not to get revenge on the Egyptians that were living in, and the foreigners that were living within their midst. It was to treat them fairly. And if you go back, I mean, people need to really go back and really study the first 5 books of the Bible. Uh, Jesus even came to say, He came to fulfill the laws, not to abolish them, because there's still certain laws that God, you know, sits there and says. God's the one that came up with our form of government. What is murder? I mean, He defines what is murder, what is stealing. He defined all of that. So if anybody thinks that you can be moral on your own, immorality came from somewhere, whether it was your parents or something, and they got it from somewhere. Sorry. So strangely, the Rabshakeh could see the truth of Egypt's weakness better than many of the leaders of Judah could. Hezekiah's trust in Egypt policy would indeed be trouble for Judah. So Motyer, Motyer, in his Isaiah commentary says, Egypt had made its one attempt to redeem its promise. In Isaiah 28:14 says, therefore hear the word of Jehovah, you scornful men who rule this people who are in Jerusalem. So made one attempt to redeem its promises, and its army had been beaten at El Tiki. The Rabshakeh had himself seen this, but his words were far more reaching and far more but his words are more far reaching and damaging, exposing the criminal stupidity of Judah's leaders. Surely, he said, they knew that anyone who ever trusted Egypt suffered for it. Commentator Dilday says, since this is the same terminology Isaiah used to symbolize Egypt, I can't talk, sorry. Egypt in Isaiah 42:3, which says, a bruised reed he will not break, and smoking flax he will not quench. He will bring forth justice for truth. Some have suggested that Sennacherib was familiar with Isaiah's prophecies and quoted here to imply he was carrying out Yahweh's will. Further support for this idea is found in verse 25, where Sennacherib seemed to be aware of Isaiah's statement that Assyria was a rod which Yahweh would use to punish Judah out of Isaiah 10 verse 5. Woe to Assyria, the rod of my anger, and the staff in whose hand is my indignation. So the Rabshakeh anticipated the response of the leaders of Judah. Rabshakeh, Rabshakeh, you say that we can't trust in Egypt. All right, we won't, but we can trust in Jehovah our Elohim. Yeah. Rabshakeh knew that the king Hezekiah had implemented broad reforms in Judah, including the removal of the high places. And again, we saw that earlier in um, verses 3 to 4. Yet, in Rabshakeh's thinking, Hezekiah's reforms had really displeased God, so he should not expect help from Jehovah Elohim of Israel. The Rabshakeh would say, look at all the places there used to be where people would worship Jehovah Elohim of Israel. Now, since Hezekiah came in, there was only one place, and which was always where it's supposed to be. More is always better, so Jehovah Elohim of Israel must be pretty sore at Hezekiah. Point one, the enemy of our souls is a skillful way of discouraging our obedience. If Hezekiah were not careful, this argument of the Rashiki would start to make sense when it really was demonic logic through and through. That's the reason why we need to put on the armor of God and have the mind of Christ and open our eyes, have the breastplate of righteousness, and remember the belt of truth. It all converges and go into Jesus. Have the sword of the Spirit. That's the reason why it's important to read the Bible, to have the sword of the Spirit, because even Jesus, when he went to the wilderness and he was tempted, he knew the scripture, so that when again, go back into what's happening now, people take parts of the scripture. That's what Boogerface does. He takes parts of the scripture, and you've got to be able to counter those parts. The enemy, let's see, the enemy of our souls has a skillful way of discouraging our obedience. If Hezekiah were not careful, this argument of the Rashiki would start to make sense when really it was demonic. Okay, I just read that. Grogan, commentator Grogan, commentating on Isaiah, says the theology misunderstanding shown by the field commander at this point argues for the authenticity of the speech, which many critics have dubbed a free creation by the author of the narrative. So this reminds us of Rashiki's whole strategy, which was to make Judah give up. This was the entire reason the Rashiki was at the aqueduct speaking to these leaders of Hezekiah's government. He had the vast superior armies. He could have just attacked Jerusalem without this little speech, but the Rashiki would prefer it if Judah would simply give up out of fear, discouragement, and despair. The enemy of our souls uses the exact same approach. Many of us picture Satan as itching for a fight, in quotes, with us. Really, Satan doesn't want to do battle with you. For first of all, there is the strong chance you will win. Second of all, win or lose, the battle can draw you closer to Jehovah. Thirdly, what Jehovah does in your life through the battle can be a great blessing for other people. No, Boogerface would much rather not fight you at all. He would much rather try to talk you into giving up. Again, I mean, and I've said this before, when, Jesus promised, he said that when you become followers of me, uh, you're going to have trouble in this world. People go into believing, okay, except Jesus is my Lord and Savior, everything's going to be hunky dory. I just have to follow him. And no, because it's a process. You have to grow in your faith. And the way you're going to grow is going to get the pressure. You're going to have the fiery darts. You're going to have. It's kind of like someone who's an addict who will eventually if you're in an addiction, you decide to get sober, you're going to have people, because you're changing things up and they're used to you being a certain way, they may get angry at you for getting sober because you're not doing what they expect. Especially if you put your trust in God, they may get angry with you. They may mock you, and there's so many different things that they come against you, and you've got to stay firm. And this is, that's the reason why you got the sower of the seeds, the four different grounds of soil in the parable in the New Testament, because sometimes, um, I mean, I tell you what, as an adult, I found God in the chaos. I mean, it stretched my faith a lot. Of course, I really don't like to go through that pain. I'm just like, can I do it without all the pain? But it helps me when I get discouraged, when I get frustrated, and I'm like, oh Lord, I don't understand. And again, it helps when I just, you know, uh, make it a point. Right now, I'm challenging myself every day. I'm going in each room and ask God to bless the room, and I'm making a commitment to do it every day for 40 days. Am I halfway there? I'm almost halfway there, and I just, and sometimes it feels rehearsed. Sometimes it's just I'm just talking to God, and it's important to try to keep that connection, and so that when something comes up and the attack happens, you can stand firm. We see this exact strategy used against Jesus during this temptation in the wilderness. Hello. When Burgerface promised Jesus all the kingdoms of the world in exchange for Jesus' worship, Burgerface was trying to avoid the fight and trying to talk Jesus into giving up. It didn't work with Jesus, and it shouldn't work with us. So we find that temptation in the Luke 4, verses 5 through 8. Then the devil, taking him up to a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said to him, all this authority I will give you, and their glory, for this has been delivered to me, and I give it to whomever I wish. Lie. First of all, God has never given Boogerface anything. Therefore, if you will worship before me, all will be yours. And Jesus answered and said to them, get behind me, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship your Lord your God, and him only you shall serve. Here, the Rabshakeh mocked Judah's weak army. He said, even if we help you with 2,000 horses, it wouldn't do any good. His basic message is, we could beat you with one hand tied behind our back. The Rabshakeh saved his best thrust for last. Admit it, Hezekiah. You know that your God is on my side. Like all good deception, it should have been easy for Hezekiah and his men to believe this one. After all, hadn't the Assyrians been wildly successful? Surely God must be on their side. Didn't they have the most powerful army? Surely God must be on their side. Yeah, well, you know what? Guess what? If he had gone to the Lord and asked for the prophet, because back then, most of the time, the prophets were the ones they were the messengers of God. They could have They could have told him. They could have asked God to say, "Okay, Lord, what can I do?" I mean, Isaiah, and not just, well, Isaiah, Zedekiah, I think Zedekiah. You had Elijah, Elisha. They gave prophecy through their ministry, and they would tell the ruler what was getting ready to happen. And let's see, did I can't remember. I said so. This was the finishing blow of a brilliant attack. Hezekiah, God told me to destroy you. I'm doing His will, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you may as well surrender. Significantly, we can say that the Rashiki was partially correct. God was with him, and his attack on Judah fulfilled God's promised plan. In conquering Syria, in conquering Israel, and in bringing Judah to the brink, the Assyrians did the will of God. God prophesied that this would happen in Isaiah 8, 3 through 4, that says, "Then I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Then Jehovah said to me, Call his name Ma'al Shalal Hashbaz. For before the child shall have the knowledge to cry, My father and my mother, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be taken away before the king of Assyria." And then in chapter 7, verses 16 and 17, "For before the child shall know to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land that you dread will be forsaken by both her kings. Jehovah will bring the king of Assyria upon you and your people and your father's house, days that have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah." Remember, okay, and just to kind of give you a little bit of background about Ephraim, Jeroboam the first, who tore the uh, kingdom apart, the Israel, that God gave him 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, he was actually from the land of Ephraim. So, and let's see, and so other passages in Isaiah had prophesied this would happen. He allowed it to happen so his prophesied plan would be fulfilled. However, we should never think that God tempted an innocent man with an evil plan. In fact, even though God predicted and planned this invasion of the Assyrians, the Rabshakeh may have been lying indeed when he said, uh, "The Lord said to me." Of course he did. God did not have to do anything special to direct the bloodthirsty, conquest hungry Assyrians to attack Syria, Israel, and Judah. He simply allowed the Syrians to carry out the corrupt desires of their evil hearts. Therefore, the Syrians could never excuse themselves by saying, "We were doing Jehovah's will," even as Judas Judas, as in Judas, like in, could never legitimately make that excuse regarding his wicked betrayal. Or Judas, yeah, Judas, uh, could never legitimately make that excuse regarding his wicked betrayal of Jesus. Verse 26, "Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, Shebna, and Joah said to the Rabshakeh, Please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understood it, and do not speak to us in Hebrew in the hearing of the people who are on the wall." But the Rabshakeh said to them, "Has my master sent me to your master and to you to speak these words, and not to the men who sit on the wall, who will eat and drink their own waste with you?" So they're kind of asking for, you know, they're basically saying, "Don't say this so that, we don't want to scare the people." So we can just imagine how difficult it was for these leaders in Hezekiah's government. They must have thought, "It's bad enough we have to hear this, but since he is speaking in Hebrew, everyone will hear. Soon the people will become so discouraged they will rise up against us and make us surrender. Patterson and Austell says Aramaic became the diplomatic lingua franca of the Near East in the Neo-Assyrian period. That well-educated member of Sennacherib's staff could speak both Hebrew and Aramaic as well as Akkadian need no longer be doubted. The Rabshakeh didn't care if the common citizens of Judah could hear him. That was one of his goals. The more fear, discouragement, and despair he could spread, the better he liked it. Think about what's happening today. You've got to take this shot. It's going to if you get sick, you're going to die. If you're around someone who's sick, you're going to get sick and you're going to die. Let's do contact tracing. If you are in or if you are around someone who's sick, oh, we need to know who else you're in contact with because we're going to stop the spread because oh, they may get sick and they may die and on and on. And if people fought back, guess what happened? If you're on social media, you got banned on social media. You're accused of spreading disinformation, misinformation. You had people who lost their jobs. I mean, look what happened. They do this. If you uh, if you speak out against an election and then challenges the integrity of an election, oh, you're an denier. You're trying to overthrow the government. You're this. You're that. How many people have gotten arrested for speaking out, for speaking truth? I mean, they're still trying to do it. There's still a faction of people trying to do that, making you afraid of you're going to be, you're going to be arrested or you're going to be harassed. I mean, how many people lost their job because they refused to take a shot? By the way, if it was so effective, why did people have to be bribed to take it? Why, if you didn't believe in the narrative, even if you didn't believe in the danger of taking the shot, if you had hesitation about maybe taking a shot, why did they have to convince people by giving you money, giving you trips? I mean, why did they have to bribe? And and people, even to this day, people don't understand that. They don't see that. So the Rafshaki pointed forward to all that what conditions would be like in Jerusalem after an extended siege. He wanted this to offend and frighten everyone who heard it, and magnifying their sense of fear, discouragement, and despair. So verse 28. Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out with a loud voice in Hebrew and spoke, saying, Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, Do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you from his hand. Nor let Hezekiah make you trust in Jehovah, saying, Jehovah will surely deliver us. This city shall not be given in the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, Make peace with me by a present and come out to me, and every one of you eat from his own vine, and every one from his own fig tree, and every one of you drink the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive groves and honey, that you may live and not die. Do not listen to Hezekiah, lest he persuade you, saying, Jehovah will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations at all delivered its land from the hand of the king of Assyria? How soon they forget. Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvim and Hena and Iva? Indeed, have they delivered Samaria from my hand? Who among all the gods of lands have delivered their countries from my hand, that Jehovah should deliver Jerusalem from my hand. Remember, these are all false gods in the first place. There's one false god. You know what this has reminded me of? This is again, we are facing the same basic thing. Today, you got a group of people. There's a group of people that have been for decades, being driven by this demonic force who is want us to go into smart cities. So they are conditioning us. They have been conditioning us for quite some time to stop looking for God for answers and looking for government, because they want to rule. Boogerface wants to rule over you and your life, and he wants you to question who Jehovah is. These people are forgetting Jehovah. Well, of course, this is a generation. This is several generations. They don't remember what it was like to be in the wilderness. They don't remember what it's like. And when Joshua took possession of the land of Canaan, the land of milk and honey that God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, uh, yes, God delivered them. God delivered them many times, and they were blessed whenever they had good kings who walked in the ways of Jehovah. Saying don't do that to the Rashiki was like saying to a naughty child. He couldn't wait to speak to the people of Jerusalem. The Rashiki's speech was indeed to glorify the enemy facing God's people. This is kind of like go back to like when Aaron's like, oh, because the Israelites were rebelling because Moses hadn't come down from Sinai when he went to get the Ten Commandments, and it reminds me of that. And he had them take all the gold and put it in the fire and made a golden calf. So you got basically in, hey, this is the God that brought you out of Egypt. No, it wasn't. So again, and it goes back to who is your idol, who is your God. You got to make God and God alone. You got to call out to Him and Him alone. So Rashiki's speech was intended to make God's people doubt their leaders. Ah, I'm losing my cursor here. Oh, come on. Come on. Hello there. I don't want all of that. Ah, there we go. The Rashiki speech was intended to build fear and unbelief in God's people. Let's see. Sorry, sometimes I have to. The Rashiki speech was intended to make surrender an attractive option. Here, the Rifshiki referred to the policies of ethnic cleansing and forced resettlement practiced by the Assyrians. Oh, this reminds me. This is we got a group of again. We got a group of people. This is what they do. They infiltrate your. They've infiltrated nations, and they take bits and pieces, and then they force you to leave somewhere and go somewhere else, and they just keep moving. When they conquered a people, they forcefully resettled them in a faraway places to keep their spirits broken and their power weak. The Rashiki's speech was intended to make this terrible fate seem attractive. The Rashiki's speech was intended to destroy their trust in God. His message was simple and brilliant in its satanic logic. And quote, the gods of other nations have not been able to protect them against us. Your God is just like one of them and can't protect you either. For anyone who have the spiritual understanding to see it, Judah could have started planning the victory party right then. It was one thing to speak against Judah, its people, and its leaders. It was another thing altogether to mock Jehovah God of Israel, or Jehovah Elohim, this way and count him as just another God. Typical of the work of the enemy of our souls, the Reb Shechem was going well until he simply overstepped his bounds. There was no way God would let him off the hook for this one. He had offended Jehovah Elohim in a way he would soon regret. Now, I wish I had time to go on, but I was going to do 19, but we've already been doing this for what, 2 hours now? Almost 2 hours. Verse 36, and I guess to wrap it up. But the people held their peace and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was, do not answer him. Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him the words of Rishakeh. They didn't try to argue with the Rishake. Often it is useless, if not dangerous, to try to match wits with this demonic logic. It is always better to keep silent and trust God instead of trying to win an argument with Boogerface or his servants. F.B. Meyer regarding Isaiah says, since our best reply to the allegations and taunts of our foes, be still, our persecuted soul. Hand over thy cause to God. It is less useless to argue, even in many cases to give explanations. Be still and commit thy cause to God. All right, come on. Let's see if I can go. Nope, they're not going to let me do it that way. All right. King Hezekiah was wise enough to make this command, and his officials and the people were wise enough to obey him. Come on. Though they were silent, they were still deeply affected by this attack. They had the same experience Paul describes in 2 Corinthians 4, verses 8 and 9. We are hard pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Things were hard, but the battle was not yet lost. So that brings us to the very end of verse 18. And we're going to have, let's see if I can, and we will see. So the next time, yeah, we're over 2 hours. The next time we meet, we will get the, Ooh, let me change my screen here, my lighting. It went from dark to light. Ooh, okay. Anyway, next time we meet, we will go over the response. What happens next. So I hope you like this. I hope this helped. I hope this gives you an idea what we're if you applied what happened back then to what's happening today. I hope you can see how it's important that we keep our focus on Jesus, how important it is to keep our focus on God. And if you like, please like, share, help me beat the algorithms if you like this content. I I would like to do this more often, but it's really hard when you got uh, when you are working part time. So in the meantime, and hit the bell, hit the notification so you know when I do go live. And let's see. Anyway, I hope you like this, and so until the next time we meet, go in shalom, go in peace.